Do you guys agree when I say that spontaneous teamwork is one of the best things to ever come out of online gaming? I mean, imagine you're playing your Counter-Strike, Overwatch, Dota 2, Battlefield, whatever, any multiplayer team-based game. Every once in a while, you likely encounter groups of nice people that are more than happy to work together and maybe even add you as a friend. Those moments are always the highlights of your gaming sessions. And then you look at War Thunder. Can you remember the last time your team actually worked together? Likely not, but I know what you can remember. Constant team killing and trash talking in the chat. How does that even happen? After all, War Thunder is also a team-based, multiplayer game with different classes of vehicles that each have their own role and a common objective to accomplish. And yet, people just don't care. The thing is, War Thunder, by design, discourages teamwork. Let me explain. So, to set the stage, I fly planes in this game. Planes are cool. They operate in a 3D space, while tanks are chained to the ground. At least for now. If you like planes, you have 3 air game modes to choose from: Arcade, Realistic, and Simulator. Technically, tank realistic battles are also a plane game mode, but that's a topic for another time. Arcade is what people start with. Planes fly like UFOs, you can respawn up to 20 times, and it's just chaos in general. I tend to stay away from it, especially considering that the rewards are very low in this mode. Simulator is the opposite. You need a joystick to play it properly, and matches are extremely long with a lot of downtime, since you spend most of it trying to find the enemy in the first place. Realistic is what me and a lot of other people consider to be the perfect balance of immersion and gameplay. You don't need a joystick, and enemies are highlighted if spotted. But unlike Arcade, planes fly in a more believable fashion, and you do need to watch things like ammo, fuel, and engine temperatures, on top of only having 1 life. Now, when you actually get into a game, you have 2 win conditions. You can either kill the entire enemy team, or you can win by reducing their tickets to 0, which is done by destroying various AI units on the ground. Now that you know all this, let's play a little game. Aircraft are roughly split into 3 groups: fighters, ground attack planes, and bombers. So can you guess what purpose does each of these groups serve? For example, if I was a person who has never played War Thunder, I would probably say that fighters provide air superiority, attackers seek out and destroy small individual ground targets, and bombers eliminate big strategic targets, just like in real life. And this appears to be true at a glance, but the reality of it is much more disappointing. Would you be surprised if I told you that 9 out of 10 games are won by fighters, 1 out of 10 by attackers, and bombers are completely and utterly useless? So let's start with bombers, as they are by far the most tragic class of aircraft in ARB. They are very slow and extremely vulnerable to fighters, so you would expect them to play a specialist role. You defend them, and in return they do something you cannot: destroy enemy bases. That sounds good, at least until you find out that destroying those bases is actually a waste of time. This is me dropping bombs on a base. It explodes, and we can see that it is worth 160 tickets. Okay. Now this is me destroying one of the most common and pathetic ground targets, and this one is worth 100 tickets. You see the problem? Why would you ever risk your life playing a slow and vulnerable bomber to maybe kill a base or two, when destroying a group of soft targets is infinitely easier and has more impact? And this is precisely why fighters don't want to help bombers. After all, why would they? What possible reason do they have to escort them if bombers do not contribute in any way? Useless by design, am I right? So, next time you decide to use a bomber in ARB, don't be mad at people who don't want to cover you. Be mad at Gaijin for this awful state of the game. The worst part about all this is that Gaijin doesn't even tell you that bombers are useless. You have to find out by yourself. Okay, so what can we do to encourage teamwork? The biggest problem is making these bomb targets actually matter for winning the game. But since Gaijin nerfed their ticket drain, I assume they don't want that. Okay, then how about making it a side objective? Airfield anti-air is one of the most annoying things in ARB, as it often prevents fighter players from getting kills when enemies hide in its bubble. So how about we make this anti-air reliant on bases? What if we make it so when enough bomb targets are destroyed, enemy anti-air gets disabled? Let's say the target is the ammunition storage, and without it, AA guns can't function anymore. This way, we create a natural synergy between bombers and fighters. If fighters defend and escort them to the target, then they get rewarded with disabled airfield AA, which means the enemy has nowhere to hide. In summary, bombers don't do anything, and that discourages teamwork. Give them a role and a purpose, and maybe, just maybe, we will actually see fighters escorting bombers one day. Now, attack aircraft. This type of planes isn't completely hopeless like bombers, but their usefulness is extremely map dependent. Destroying small ground units can indeed win you the game on very specific maps, but that's about it. You see, the issue here is the fact that they need to destroy every single little thing on the ground to achieve victory on most maps. That takes a lot of time, and get this, if they don't clean up everything, then it was all for nothing. So in the end, we run into the same issue. Why would fighter players protect attackers if it doesn't benefit them in any way whatsoever? It likely won't win them the game. In fact, it likely won't do anything at all. So I propose a similar solution to this problem. Give attackers a side objective to accomplish, something that would benefit your entire team. For example, neutral airfields. What if we had neutral airfields scattered across the maps, with your ground forces attempting to capture them? However, they would only be able to do so if players destroyed enemy defenses nearby, stuff like tanks and pillboxes. This way, even if attackers don't destroy enough ground targets to win the game, they can still help your team by capping these airfields. Again, this creates natural synergy. If fighters protect attackers, they get rewarded with more airfields to resupply on. In fact, that's already in the game. We already had maps like that in the past. Remember Norway? On this map, the allied team started without an airfield. That sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? However, there was an extra enemy airfield in the middle of the map. If you successfully protected your ground forces from the enemy players, they would capture this airfield for you, allowing you to repair and resupply. This really makes me think. So clearly Gaijin understands how to create engaging objectives. In fact, many old maps used to have all kinds of unique objectives that required player participation. And yet, for some reason, they decided to make maps with no objectives at all. But I digress. In summary, attackers just don't have any impact on most maps, and that once again discourages any kind of teamwork. Give them a real reason to go after those ground targets, something that benefits the entire team, and maybe players will actually work together. And finally, fighters. Those don't have any problems and don't need any help. Fighters do the most important thing of them all. They kill the enemy players. And if you want to win, that's really all you need to do. Almost every game looks something like this. Bombers and attackers know that nobody is going to help them, so they use their air spawn to rush towards the ground targets and get annihilated instantly. After that, it's just fighters dogfighting each other until one team inevitably gets an advantage, and the losing side retreats to the airfield to sit there forever, as the anti-air defenses are all but impenetrable. This is in fact the only complaint I can make as a fighter player myself. The airfield anti-air is way too powerful and only serves to waste time. I'm sure you've had that situation where only one or two enemies remain and the game is essentially over. And yet, those enemies choose to camp the airfield and waste time, knowing that you can't do anything about it. That's why one of my suggestions has to do with disabling the AA. It is simply a bad gameplay mechanic. Outside of that, however, ARB is a fighter game mode. They do everything, they kill everyone, and ground attack aircraft are just useless chaff. And I can totally see why some people prefer it that way. After all, it's just pure PvP. Now, while I do believe that dogfights are the most fun you can have in this game, I also want this PvP to have focus. Right now, there is none. ARB is just a deathmatch game mode where nothing matters. Maps are mostly the same with no real objectives, and ground attack planes have no purpose. Players have no reason to actually engage with each other or work together. It's an empty sandbox that just barely qualifies as a game mode, while it could be so much more if it was given attention it needs so much. So that's why, in my opinion, ARB fails as a game mode and discourages teamwork. However, as always, there is a much bigger fundamental problem that eliminates teamwork in every mode, not just air. To see what that problem is, you need to think back to games I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Counter-Strike, Overwatch, Dota, and most other team-based games out there. These games have something very important that War Thunder doesn't possess. What are you trying to accomplish when you play those games? To win the match, obviously. Your individual performance doesn't matter as much if you all work together and manage to beat the enemy team. Victory is the end goal. So what about War Thunder? If you tell me you play to win, I won't believe you. In fact, I would wager that at least 95% of War Thunder's player base plays not to win, but to grind. And that makes all the difference. See, War Thunder is a free-to-play game that requires you to unlock everything. Not only do you need to grind for new vehicles, you also need to grind modifications for these vehicles to make them worth using in the first place. And what is the best way to grind? To get as many player and AI kills as you possibly can. And with that in mind, you realize that your team is actually your true enemy. Every kill you give to your teammates is one less kill for yourself. So as you get more experienced, you realize that this game is all about being a vulture. The endgame of War Thunder is learning how to use your teammates as bait, while getting as many kills as you can just for yourself. Be selfish or go home. Now, of course, you can make an argument that winning still matters. After all, if you win, your final reward gets multiplied. And I would have actually agreed with you about 4 years ago, but not today. You see, something terrible has happened in 2022. Gaijin decided to trick the entire player base into willingly nerfing the economy, and people, of course, fell for the bait. I'm talking about the vote they had to make the winning bonus more fair. In the past, there used to be a massive difference in rewards on losses compared to victories. And so, Gaijin offered to shift the numbers around to close the gap between wins and losses. And sure enough, players agreed. Now, not only did this change make victories matter less, it straight up reduced the average earnings of every player whose win rate was above 40%. A few users on Reddit even tried to explain that this change would be a disaster by using simple math, but it was all for nothing. The community has voted. So nowadays, winning doesn't really matter. It's a nice bonus, but you are much better off just getting more kills for yourself. Especially considering that Gaijin added a personal skill bonus to players who end the game with a lot of kills. I hope you can see where I am going with this. War Thunder, at its core, is a game that promotes individual performance and discourages teamwork. You stand to gain everything by simply focusing on kills, and you stand to gain nothing by helping your teammates. There is no real point to War Thunder matches. Objectives are meaningless. The only real objective you have is to be on top of the scoreboard with as many kills as you can get. And if that means sacrificing or even actively sabotaging your teammates, then so be it. Now, fixing this fundamental problem is actually incredibly easy. All you need to do is give players a fixed reward for winning, so if your team wins, everybody benefits, and not just the top 5 players on the scoreboard. That is such a simple solution, and yet it will likely never get implemented. Rewarding players for simply winning is too good for War Thunder. After all, it's a game that's built on player suffering. The average player is always struggling to earn SL, to earn RP, to unlock vehicles and modifications for them, and that pushes them to spend money on some kind of premium features. Simply rewarding them for winning would be too easy. And so, that's War Thunder for you. The most antisocial team-based game you can find on the market. Okay, time for a recap of all recent events. Gaijin has added yet another $80 premium in the form of the F-18. But that one isn't even a top tier plane. When you pay $80 for the Viggen, it at least comes with like active radar missiles, while F-18 is $80 just because it's an F-18. The April Fool's event ended up being a World War I game mode, which was honestly just awful. It is probably the worst April Fool's event they have done in the history of War Thunder, and I had enough of it after just one game. A waste of effort, in my opinion. StatShark, the best online resource for War Thunder information, has gotten numerous improvements since my last video. Missile Calculator now has animations, you can see global win rates by nation and by battle rating, and there is a new rating system for player performance. Very good stuff. There has also been quite a disturbing development. Devis, a player that was featured in this video by Defin, who was also working as a volunteer for Gaijin, has been exposed exchanging extremely indecent messages with a minor. The screenshots were leaked, and they are so bad that I can't possibly show them on YouTube. He has since eliminated all his accounts and disappeared. Now, it is unlikely that he will face legal trouble for this, which is a real shame. So be careful on the internet, kids. It's not a safe place. And yes, I haven't posted since January. I know, and I am sorry. A lot of things get in the way, but I promise you that I'm always thinking about good ideas for videos. I will do what I can. So thank you, and an extra huge thanks to my Patreon supporters. I love you and I cherish you. See you in the next video.